What does it mean to be congruent? To be congruent means to be in agreement, accordance, or harmony with. In geometry, two figures or objects are congruent if they have the same shape and size, or if one has the same shape and size as the mirror image of the other. And in a person, congruence is really about everything working together in sync and harmony. So congruent people behave according to their beliefs and their values, their purpose, their mission, their goals. Being congruent as a person means you're true to yourself. It means understanding who you are and what's important to you, and then acting on that. Being congruent also allows you to maintain a good rapport with yourself, essentially. The more that you do and express what matters to you the most, the more your sense of self and who you are grows. And if we live in accordance with what we value, then those values become stronger and stronger in us, more a part of us. On the other hand, if we do things that go against our values, we become less and less congruent, less of ourselves, and start to kind of lose ourselves in the antithesis of what we were really striving to be. So another definition of congruence is a consistent state of behavior, meaning there's consistency between the goals, the values, and attitudes projected, and then the actual behavior observed. So as the saying goes, you practice what you preach. You're congruent spiritually when your beliefs match up with your actions every day and with your spiritual practice. So you say what you believe, and then you believe what you say, and you act on your belief and follow through on the guidance that's coming from on high, from your master, from that inner reflection. And in this way, the body, mind, and soul finally come into alignment, which allows for harmony to flow through the body as naturally as you breathe. You maintain that congruence by honoring the spiritual truths that you have consistently made a part of your interior life. And then the people who are congruent are generally more at peace because their behavior is a direct expression of their values and what matters to them. When people are congruent, their life often seems to flow better. They feel more content. Now, that doesn't mean it's all easy, doesn't mean it's without challenges, but they typically appear stronger and more able to handle the ups and downs of life because in large part, they're functioning from this fixed set of values and beliefs around which they make all of their decisions confidently, decisively, and consistently. As someone once said, if I think about my own life, I didn't know that I would be doing what I'm doing now. For me, the journey has been about achieving greater congruence in everything I do by moving in the direction of what feels more real and true to my values. And that journey continues. There certainly hasn't been just one thing that's made me feel congruent. There are many things that I have done over the years. And if past experience is anything to go by, there'll be many more which I don't even know about yet. So striving to be more and more congruent in your life can potentially lead to some unexpected outcomes as we grow more and more into the self that we want to be. And of course, we're talking here about the self with a capital S. And then the advantage also of this in terms of your dealings with other people and in relationship is that being congruent makes you more trustworthy. Have you ever met someone who, for some reason, you just immediately didn't trust, or maybe you stopped trusting someone because you saw that they said one thing, but then did another? It might have been because they were incongruent. I once knew someone who was really warm and loving with every single person that he came into contact with who knew him. So we would go to the store, and if he knew that those people knew who he was, oh, it's so nice to see you, big hugs, lots of warm love, etc. And then in the same day, we would go to another store where they didn't know him. And it was like he was completely rude to them. And it started over time to make me not trust him. I thought, are you only being this way because you're getting something from it, right? But this isn't consistently who you are. I knew another person who once was really, really patient with other people, incredibly patient, tolerant, non-judgmental, all of the things that you're looking for in somebody when you're looking to confide in someone. And then finally met this person's family, and the way that he was with his family was completely day and night. It was like he yelled at them at one point about having the television cables miswired. Somebody had messed with the TV cabling, and it was pretty shocking, right? Because it didn't feel coherent. It wasn't like this person was congruent and they're behaving the same with everyone in their lives. Now, obviously, all of us have these places and spaces where we are not congruent, and we're working on it. And it's not to shame any of the people that are these examples, because I'm sure I've been the example as well for other people. But in both cases, I know I personally lost trust in those people that I previously looked up to because they were incongruent. So it's something that's really serious when we're thinking about wanting to be an example in the world and wanting people to trust us so that we can actually be there to serve them. And us being incongruent is something that is going to hold us back from doing just that. And then when people don't trust us, it's obviously worth paying attention, right? Because it means that they might be reflecting back to us that there's somewhere where we're not congruent, or we're out of alignment with our values or with what we say and do. It could also be because of their own trust issues, of course, but it is always worth looking at whether or not we played a role in creating distrust in other people. So ideally, what you think and how you feel should match the way you behave. In other words, when you are congruent, what you say and what you do matches. So being congruent means living your life on purpose with a clear idea of who you are and continuously refining it to match what you value. But of course, you must first know your purpose and understand what it is that you stand for. And then for those of us in the teachings, this is where things get really interesting and a lot more dimensional. So Dwal Kuhl talks extensively about the law of congruency in volume 17, number 41. He says, no matter where you are or what you're doing, you cannot escape the inevitable law of congruency. If you allow yourself to become angered, willful, rebellious, or entangled in the threads of Maya, then so long as you sustain that vibration by your free will, you are one with and you reinforce the consciousness of all others who are similarly preoccupied with the myths of mortality. And the soul's apparatus to be a distributing center for light is used to proliferate the energy veil, and the light that is in thee is darkness. When you consider the state of your mind and your feelings at any hour of the day or night, consider whether or not you would desire to have your aura amplify that state 1,000,000 times. And consider whether you would have that state reinforced by millions of auras that reflect your own and project the images of their consciousness upon the screen of cosmos. Consider that your aura is a mirror of forces both within the microcosm of your individual world and within the entire macrocosm. Consider that you, in your determination to focus a particular virtue of the Godhead, a certain aspect of the Holy Spirit, by the very intensity of your determination, can magnetize the determination of God to be that virtue, that aspect. Therefore, by maximizing the sacred fire within your heart through invocation, you can increase the concentric rings of influence that make up your aura. You can make your vote for light and for right count across the entire planetary body as your aura becomes a sounding board for the honor flame of ascended masters and cosmic beings whose light emanations are drawn by the very purity of your love and your determination to be a component of the divine consciousness. Consider the enormous power of influence that you wield when you align yourself with cosmic forces and cosmic principles. And this is another key in understanding the simple statement: one with God is a majority. Consider also how your indulgences in the petulance and the pettiness of the ego reinforce the myopic existence of mankind, who pursue an endless round of ego-centered activities and use their auras to amplify the ego personality of the synthetic image instead of the Christed personality of the real image. When a man or woman comes to the place where he realizes the enormous responsibility of influencing life for good or evil, he begins to understand the statement written in the law, I have said, ye are gods. Surely the power that man can wield through the correct or incorrect use of the aura can make him instantly a god or a devil. Surely the power that a man can wield through the correct or incorrect use of the aura can make him instantaneously a god or a devil. The more you learn of the science of the aura, the more you will come to realize that there is no in-between. For every erg of energy and every microbe of thought, every wave of feeling by the law of congruency and the oneness of all life in all planes, resounds throughout the creation, either to increase or to decrease the light momentum of the aura of the cosmos. Oof, that is a lot of responsibility, is it not? To know that we wield this much influence over life around us at all times. And when we're not congruent with the divine blueprint, we amplify all that is unreal. If we get down in the dumps or negative or too navel gazing and myopic, we drag all of mankind down with us. And I know this is a time of year where a lot of people are celebrating, and then there are a lot of people who are in a lot of pain because the holidays can bring that about. And this is a time where we as light bearers can be the ones to pull them out of that darkness, to pull them out of that depression, that loneliness, just by our right thought, feeling, and action. I'm sure many of you have heard of Dr. Masaru Emoto, who theorized that human consciousness has an effect on the molecular structure of water and responds to positive and negative words accordingly. In 1994, Dr. Emoto conducted a study in which he exposed different samples of water to different words for a period of time. Some samples were exposed to the word love, some to the words thank you, and others to the phrase, I hate you. Then he would freeze the water to observe the effects. These photos are amazing, and I encourage you to look for them later if you want to, but essentially what he found is that when he exposed water to the word love, it ends up looking almost like a diamond. It's a very complex crystal structure, very harmonious and beautiful. The thank you word also contributed to a very beautiful crystal, a little more simple in form, a little bit more like an emerald cut diamond instead of something really complex, but still exquisite and harmonious and beautiful. And then the words I hate you created this image that essentially kind of looks like lava exploding from a volcano with lots of bubbles in it, and like something that would have come from Mordor if anybody's seen The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. So it's very, very gross looking, and you can see the distortion from those words and the water crystals. His revolutionary findings were published in The Hidden Message in Water. And these results are pretty amazing on their own, but when you consider that our bodies are made up of about 60% water, and then about 2/3 of the world is made up of water, you can see the importance of putting those right thoughts and those right words and phrases out into the world. So if those words can impact a single droplet of water so drastically, how much can they affect the human body? How much can they affect the planet? His findings, of course, drummed up a lot of skepticism and caused other people to do their own research and debunk him if they could. And then there were even some, I found online, there was a mom and her children who decided to recreate one of his experiments with a jar of rice, or 3 jars of rice. So what they did is essentially they filled 3 mason jars with rice that was cooked, and then they assigned a word to each jar. So one was love, one was hate, and then one was unlabeled. And what they did is every day they would give kind and encouraging words to the love jar. They would give mean and discouraging words to the hate jar, and then completely ignore the unlabeled jar. After 21 days, they found that the jar exposed to the kind words was pretty much untouched and looked pristine for the most part, as much as rice would after 21 days. Then they had another, the jar that they had exposed to the hateful words was pretty gross. It was kind of starting to turn a little bit black, but the jar that they completely ignored was by far the grossest. It was the moldiest of all. It was blue and green and filled with black and really, really nasty. And so the thing that they came to the conclusion of was that, Mother Teresa had said it best: spiteful words can hurt your feelings, but silence breaks your heart. And as they say, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. So whatever words or emotions we put out or don't put out are contagious. Both positive and negative thoughts are contagious. When we see cheerful people around us, we feel our days get a bit brighter. And then obviously, if we talk to somebody who's on the grumpier side, if we don't protect ourselves, we end up getting a little bit down. There's that SNL skit I'm sure some of you have seen at some point in time with Debbie Downer. She comes to a party and she comes in and everything she says out of her mouth is negative and she has something horrible to share, and it essentially, just kills the whole vibe of the party and people stop having a nice time. And so we see this happen, and it's obviously a joke, but it's also not a joke because it's exactly real. Badiouxzamat put it well as well. He said, a person who sees the good in things develops good thoughts, and he who has good thoughts receives pleasure from life. So that pleasure leads to gratitude, which connects us to the divine. These positive thoughts lead to good feelings and good deeds. They diminish our negativity, make our hearts happy. Negative thoughts generate bad feelings and hatred, jealousy, anger, depression, stress, negative emotions, which all cloud our souls and lead to an unhealthy existence, and then also make us a negative influence on others. To be able to stay healthy emotionally and psychologically, we need to immediately turn ourselves to positive thinking whenever we feel surrounded by negatives or negativities or any negative feelings, thoughts, people, etc. So while we may not have full control initially over the types of thoughts that cross our minds every moment, of course, we still have the ability to ignore or pursue them. And this is why meditation is such a wonderful tool for observing the thoughts we're having, so we can choose whether we want to claim those as us or as ours. What we think, feel, and say can also have a lasting impact on people, whether positive, negative, or neutral. How many of you still remember the really kind words of a stranger from maybe years ago, or the hurtful words of a loved one from childhood, or maybe last year? I know I personally have even sensed or almost heard the thoughts of people from afar on multiple occasions, especially when they're negative. So it's not even just that we have a temporary impact on the world around us with our thoughts, our feelings, our words, but what we say, think, and feel can actually potentially leave a permanent imprint on others for their entire lives, and even change the course of their lives or ours, for better or for worse. It's really humbling. Dwalkuhl goes on to say, the soul that descends into the planes of matter has then the potential to be the point of contact for solar hierarchies. For inherent within the soul's own energy field are the electronic matrices that enable it to become a center for the distribution of the light that is needed to nourish and sustain a planet and its evolutions. When each layer of your aura is filled with light, and the soul moves in its expanding self-awareness to the point where it magnetizes more light than the capacity of the layers, the aura is translated from the human to the divine. And it is not long before the soul is elevated in its expression from the planes of matter to the planes of spirit, for the world can no longer contain it. As you increase the intensity of the aura, you not only increase the dimensions of your aura in time and space, but you find that your aura becomes a means of communicating with new dimensions of the spirit, even while it transports your soul into higher frequencies of matter. For you see, the aura that you build as a reflection of your awareness of God in many planes surrounds not only the physical form, but also the etheric, mental, and emotional vehicles. The aura then serves as the force field of light that has been called from the seamless garment. This garment adorns the etheric body as that body becomes the vehicle of the soul in its journeying in other octaves of matter. To develop the aura, then, is to prepare the place of consciousness where, by the law of congruency, you can receive here and now in the planes of matter those ascended masters and Christed ones, whose light bodies will mesh with your own because your aura has taken on and become the frequency of the Holy Spirit that is individualized by various members of the Great White Brotherhood. To be sure, it is the dimensions of life with which you identify, whereby the attainment of your cosmic consciousness is measured. The action of the law of congruency is indeed wondrous to behold. Thus, as you increase the intensity and the light frequency of the heart, which in turn feeds energy to all of the chakras and matter, and expands the rings of the aura, you come to the place where, through the merging of the aura of the ascended masters with your own, you can proclaim the joy of God's geometry. Behold, I and my Father are one. I and my mother are one. And lo, the star above has become the star below. Wherever you are in consciousness at this moment, know, O Chela of the light, that you are one with every other soul, whether in matter or in spirit, who is at this moment experiencing that level, that frequency of God's being. If you are meditating upon Jesus the Christ and his great example, then you are one with all others who have an identical appreciation for his ministry. And if by your meditation upon Jesus you become that Christ, then you are also one with every other soul who has ever become the Christ, past, present, and future. So what happens if there are parts of us that want different things? What if we're not as congruent as Chelas as we think we are, or we want to be? Well, the first step is to get clear about the different agendas that are warring within us. Be honest about them, and then consider, how can we implement new habits or stop doing other things in our lives now, starting today, to make us more congruent? As we said before, the more you act like who you are and want to be, the more you become that person. And when we're congruent, we're more confident. We have more energy, decisions are easier, we feel better about ourselves, people are more likely to trust us. So what is it that stops us from being congruent beyond the forces of darkness? And obviously the forces of darkness within, but from a psychological standpoint, it's because we aren't really sure how we feel. We aren't really actually sure how we feel. We aren't confident enough to say it out loud, or we're overwhelmed by what others might think about us or think of us, want from us. This can lead us to not set boundaries with ourselves and other people that preserve our values, or to behave in ways that are inconsistent. So really exploring what your fundamental beliefs and values are according to the teachings and reflecting on what's important to you is a great way to work on this. What are the things that are most important to you? It's great to write that down. What do you respect most in other people? How do your values influence your life choices? After you really think about it, maybe even journal about it, the things that you really value, ask yourself, are your actions and your behaviors matching these values? If they don't, then you might have a conflict, and it might be worth looking at where you're a little bit incongruent. The world is finally waking up to this truth around our interconnectedness and the impact of the aura after a really long time of not acknowledging or remembering it. It's a really exciting time. And Dwalko goes on to say in the same dictation, because of mankind's gross misuse of the power of the human aura in past ages, this power was taken from him by divine decree. The scientific and mathematical formula for the development of the powers of the aura were withdrawn from the masses, and mankind's sensory and extrasensory perceptions became dulled, according to their misuses of the powers of the aura. Finally, as abuses led to density and density to further abuses, even the knowledge of the existence of the aura was withdrawn. No longer having empirical proof of the existence of the aura, mankind ceased to experiment with the science of auric emanations and control, and the soul's conquest of other dimensions of matter that can be accomplished only through this science came to a halt. In recent years, through Calerian photography and experiments with plant, scientists have postulated the theory of the L field as a blueprint of life and a force field of energy that can be observed and photographed with either scientific instruments or the specialized photography, Calerian photography, which uses neither camera nor lens. Suddenly now, after thousands of years of blindness and of the blind following the blind, mankind has awakened to new planes of matter that exist and can be verified just beyond concrete matter. What a vast area of exploration and discovery experiments in parapsychology have opened, and mankind are once again pushing back the frontiers of knowledge. Man is on the brink of discovering the higher self. His head peeping above the clouds, he beholds himself alone against the backdrop of infinity. Beyond mortality, man must have the courage to proceed alone, and the understanding that he is here and now, all one with life. In the stillness of the dawn, man meets the infinite. As the last stars are put to bed and the morning light quickens his solar awareness, man gazes into the infinite blue. And he's aware that by the power of an inner sight, a faculty of the soul, he's contacting dimensions beyond the contemporary world and beyond the knowledge of that world as man has counted knowledge for thousands of years. What is this infinite blue that the soul of man can inhabit by simply expanding the faculties of soul? Is it not the aura of God in the macrocosm? As you contemplate the self, all one with the higher self, moving through the being of God, won't you give this my prayer for the oneness of all life? Now, this is a really long and beautiful prayer I'd love to give together, but you can just follow along in your heart. So let's take a moment to just center in our hearts. Ask to be congruent with your master, with the White Brotherhood. Reach up to them, feel them overshadow you now as we give this prayer together. O infinite one, thou God of all above, below, it is thyself that I would know. Come unto me, come into me, O God of love, let me dwell with thee, in thee. My soul longs to climb the ladder of thy law. As children play on the playground in their jungle gym, so I would move along the parallel bars of thy congruency, of thy formlessness and form. I would exercise my soul along the grids and force fields of the anakarana of life. O God, let me feel the rods and cones that compose thy being, for thou knowest, O God, that I would heal all those who have made themselves exceptions to thy law of congruency. O God, how I love thy geometry in time and space. How I love thy design, thy creativity, thy bountiful grace. O God, let me come home. Let me tarry in the threefold essence of thy throne. Oh yes, I would work thy works on earth according to thy law, sacred wonder, sacred awe. But for a moment, Lord, let me tarry in thy word. Let me come and kneel before thy throne. Oh, let me sit at thy feet, divine master, in thy retreat, that I might renew the sacred essence and the memory I once knew of our togetherness in the foreverness of the infinity I would view. O God, as thou art the point of light within the hidden chamber of my heart, let me enter there. Let my soul be washed by flowing flame. Let me be renewed to serve mankind again. I am thy servant, Lord. I am thyself in form, O Lord, O formless one, make us one, that I might be the fullness of thyself in and out of immortality. Thy law is love, thy word is truth. Now let my soul be living proof. As thou art here and everywhere, so I affirm I am here and I am there. This then is the humble prayer of the one who would become the fullness of thy blazing sun. I am the oneness that I am. Oh, beloved Joel Cool, thank you so much for this beautiful teaching and this beautiful prayer this morning. Please help us have no dissonance between our word and our spirit, no pretense. Please help our soul find its cosmic dimension. Help us reach up for that consciousness of congruency with the divine blueprint for life. We ask for all this to be done according to your will. Amen.